Tonight on CU at USC, we have a very special edition of CU at USC on the eve of a potentially historic night, election night, of electing potentially the first female president of the United States. We're talking with 5 inspirational and motivational women about their careers, their lives, and also what the potential election of Hillary Clinton could mean for young women everywhere. That's coming up right here on Trojan Vision. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to CU at USC. My name is Sullivan. I'm the host this evening for this very special election night edition of CU at USC. We're not on our normal set. We're here on this special election set because we have 5 incredible, inspirational women joining us. I want to introduce all of them, starting over here with Catherine Gray. Catherine is the producer and the organizer of the Live, Love, Thrive Women's Empowerment Conference. Next to her is Tabby Biddle. Tabby is a women's leadership coach. Over here on my left is Brandy Gilmore. Brandy is a mind and body coach. Next to her is Reyna Grande. She's an author who has a really incredible story of coming to this country and making it, becoming the first college graduate in her family. And over here we have Nicole Ehrlich. She's the co-producer of The Hunting Ground and has also worked on a number of music videos and other mediums throughout that. Nicole, I want to start with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
And I want to talk to you about The Hunting Ground, because in this election campaign, as a college audience, sexual assault has come up. It's come up talking with about Donald Trump and different things that he's said. It's also come up in just kind of our day-to-day college lives as college students here. What was that experience like of producing The Hunting Ground? What kind of takeaways did you have from it?
I believe that the most important takeaway from that is we need to change legislation. And we also need to make sure that we have the right leaders. You know, our sons have to be heroes, you know, and supporters, not adversaries. We need people to take charge who put people's lives on a pedestal, everyone's life. Mm-hmm. You know, not just who that person believes life should be on that pedestal. Everybody's life needs to be on a pedestal. And I think we just all need to be conscious when we're electing the President of the United States that they are the right leaders and supporters for everybody's life.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you, Brandy, about that too, because you know, you mentioned electing the right leaders and electing people who can make a difference and can bring throughout the campaign, throughout their leadership time in office, really do the right thing. Throughout the campaign, especially talking about sexual assault, we heard Donald Trump say in an Access Hollywood bus, this video that kind of leaked talking about how he kind of envisions his ability in interacting with women. What, for you as kind of a mind-body coach, when you hear someone say something like that, and also as a woman, when you hear someone say something like that, what kind of thought process does that make you go through? What do you think when you hear something like that?
You know, to be honest, naive, just uneducated, unaware. I mean, for someone to put down another race or look at them in a derogatory way, to me, it breeds a sense of insecurity inside. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that when we can all realize the power in you and the power in you, and all of us really bring our best self forward and sincerely want everybody to lift themselves and to really be their best and their fullest potential, I think that's what's important for humanity and for our country.
So when you're interacting with kind of clients, if you will, on a one-to-one basis, someone who you say, you know, you need to be your best self, as you will, what kinds of tips and tricks do you give to someone along those lines? To
be their best self. You know, it's so funny. A lot of people are deeply influenced by their peer groups, by who they're around is really key, and it really depends on who's trying to do really what, I guess. Mostly to live from their heart, because when they have their heart in it, it gives them energy to keep going and to really be in full integrity. And I think that when you're in that space, people support what you're doing and your cause, and it helps you to even be your best self even more.
And I want to ask you about this too, Tabby, because as a women's leadership coach, it's something that we see, I would imagine you see a lot, as people who are trying to put forward their best selves and trying to be the best of who they can be. What advice do you give to women who you coach to do that?
Yeah.
And how does it differ from advice one might give to a man? What is it different for women?
I think the key thing for women is finding their voice. Right now you see women are out there trying to amplify their voice through blogs, through videos, through leadership in the corporate workplace and in government, as we see the potential for the first female president. The key I see for a woman to really advance in her leadership is to be so tuned into her voice and get out there without apology for her values, without apology for her feminine lens on how she sees the world. Because we have been oriented so much toward a patriarchal society, we as women have lived from that lens and have tried to advance in leadership in a way that we meet a male norm. That's not going to work. We're going to stall out and burn out, frankly, speaking of mind-body education. So I tell women the most important thing is to find their voice, and then we work from there to start taking steps to get out there in the world and use it without apology.
So one of the, on election night, where we're here tonight on election night talking about finding a voice, a woman finding her voice. Hillary Clinton has been in the public eye, Catherine, for a long time. She's been since the 90s. She kind of rose to national and international prominence.
Right.
What do you think? Do you think she's found her voice over this period of time? How do you think she's developed in this way?
Do I think she's found her voice? I think that she's an obvious trailblazer. So in that respect, she's found her voice. She speaks for all the women's voices who want to be heard, as far as being the first candidate ever to be a female in our history of the United States. So that's a pretty big voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So she kind of has, but is it, and this, Tabby, you might want to weigh in on this too, is it that she's found it herself, or that it's kind of been brought upon her, right? She's kind of come into this role and thus
that
has the voice.
That woman has been at this for 40 years, relentlessly. I think anybody, whether you're for her or not, would have to applaud her tenacity. I think even Donald Trump said that was the one thing he admired about her. She doesn't give up. And yes, I think she has definitely earned it. It's not been an easy road. That's what it takes in order for a woman to finally be in that position, is to be someone who doesn't take no for an answer. So yes, I think she has found her voice, and she just has a lot of women around it that she speaks for, because we need a woman in order to have a voice.
And go ahead.
I'd like to chime in there, because I would agree, but I also think there's more of her voice that we can discover, or that she can discover, and that she can bring forth. And as she hopefully becomes the first female president, I think that gives more and more women and girls permission to use their true voice, because as I said earlier, we really mask a lot under the male norm, and Hillary herself has had to walk a path very much living in the male paradigm, and I applaud her for the incredible work that she has done for women thus far, but I think there's much more to discover of her voice as she hopefully takes that role of the first female president.
I mean, when she said human rights or women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights, that was definitely a pretty powerful voice for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that that's carried forward to women's issues today. Nicole, you were talking about the hunting ground earlier, and sexual assault, especially on college campuses, is a really big deal, and a really, I think, an opportunity where a lot of women are trying to have their voices heard. Is that kind of what you found through the producing of the documentary as well? In terms of, let me rephrase that a little bit. So let me say, like, if you're thinking about women's issues in a more broad perspective on college campuses, as a college TV program, on a college network, one of the big things that I think comes to mind for a lot of people is sexual assault, and is activists and people who are featured in the documentary finding their voice through sharing their experiences and advocating for change. Do you think that's something that's seen not just in this issue of sexual assault, but kind of plays more broadly across the political spectrum as well?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think it just plays to sexual assault either. I think we're on a college campus and there are so many courses that women in general can be taking to expand their knowledge. And because they've been such, like even the tech fields and the sciences, and I know it's becoming, more available and, it's becoming more popular, but it's still so dominated by men. And we need pioneers in that industry. We need girls to sign up for those classes and take them so other girls can, because we can, discover the cure for cancer, and we can make the next, cell phone that we see out of our eyes that you don't even need to hold. Mm-hmm. So I think it expands in every single relationship in our life. Mm-hmm. So it's super important that we have, those role models, and especially a female president against a candidate like she's going against.
And so you brought up Donald Trump right there, and I'm glad you did, because Reyna, I want to bring you into this conversation as well. You have a really inspirational story that I'm going to ask you to share of growing up in Mexico and then immigrating to the United States. So first, if you'll tell me a little bit about kind of your childhood growing up and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, both my parents came to the U.S. and left me behind when I was 2 years old. So I spent about 8 years being separated, especially from my father, who was gone longer. And that was a really difficult time, separating the family, breaking up the family. And I speak from a perspective of a child immigrant. In order for me to be reunited with my father, I had to cross the border illegally when I was 9.5, so I had to run across. Mm-hmm. And that's, it's the stakes for me were much higher than risking my life. It meant having a father or not having a father in my life. So coming here to the U.S., as a child immigrant definitely gives me a different perspective in terms of, my identity as an American or as a Mexican, or just navigating, those two cultures, the two languages, my two countries, and how I can find a place in which to belong within those cultures. But it's been a difficult time for me this past year, just kind of constantly hearing Trump insulting, the Mexican community, and it's very personal. Yeah. He's been very explicit about, the insults and the way he feels about Mexicans in general, and just hearing, all the negativity that comes out of his mouth, especially when he said, "Oh, Mexico doesn't send its best," and I feel like the 30 years I lived in this country, I've done nothing but give my best to this country. So I definitely resented that remark, but I feel that the Mexican community and the Latino community in general has been coming together to really fight against that image.
Yeah, and so when we were talking about finding your voice as a woman, but also finding your voice, in a Latino community or a Mexican community where they've had record numbers of voter registration, record numbers of voter turnout. Do you see any parallels between, Hillary Clinton as the first woman president, but also understanding that her opponent, if you will, could be really, has said some really bad things about the Latino community? Do you think there's a parallel there, some sort of similarity in terms of the impetus to find your voice?
Yeah, and I think that really applies to Latina women too, because we're fighting against the image that Trump is portraying about Latinos, but also what he's been saying about women in general. So we have like two battles going on that we're fighting. But you shouldn't mess around with Latinas, because you'll be in trouble.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
The scary thing is if he was an athlete or a celebrity, he would have lost all of his endorsements. He would have been kicked off, Fox or CNN for if he was on a show, and yet he's still being supported by the Republican Party and millions of people. Mm-hmm. It's super twisted.
And a rape accusation, like that's just crazy.
Yeah, and I want to talk, and we're coming up against our first commercial break, but I want to talk about kind of the impact that the rhetoric around this election has had on young women, with the hope, and then also with, it feels as if a lot of almost steps back in the public eye, as you're mentioning. That's coming up right after our first commercial break here on the special election night edition of See You at USC. Welcome back to See You at USC, the special election edition of See You at USC. We have these 5 wonderful women with us tonight, and I want to give you a little bit more details about them as I ask this next question. So, Tabby, you teach women how to give TED Talks. You teach women how to be leadership positions, because that's something that's missing in our country. Coming up on this historic election, the first woman president, what's the impact that you think it will have 10 years down the line on young women who are growing up in this age of potentially having the first female president of the United States?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because it's an important one. I think it's huge. I think it validates for women that their voice matters, their opinions matter, and that they're not, as I grew up, and I think many of us, we grew up with our opinions as second rate, second class. And I think having a female president, because she is kind of the ultimate authority, if you will, in our society, will give women just that new lens that, of course, what I have to say is important, and I don't have to second guess that.
On top of that new lens, I think, even wages. I think so. It's not, it's incredible what she's doing and who she is and the way she's standing for what she believes in. And as I mentioned heart earlier, you can look at her whole career and see that her heart has been into the country and making a change and all of that. But the wages, I think, even gives women more of a feeling of, okay, look, let's equality.
Yeah.
I think that's key also.
I call it the Bold Girls Club, because there's an old boys club, and I always say nobody wants to belong to the old girls club, but we do want to have like a Bold Girls Club network. We have to network and help each other. That's what it's all about. It's empowering each other to rise up into more positions of influence, because we need both at the table. You need both men and women at the table in every industry, whether it be entertainment or politics or tech or science, because like Nicole was saying, otherwise you miss out on all that brain power that they bring to the table. And each men and women bring different things to the table. They're different beasts, and so both are important, and that's what's been lacking in the world. It's not been enough female input.
And Nicole, I want to bring you in on this too, because I keep bringing up the hunting ground because that's a subject that's really relevant to our college students.
Yeah.
But you produced a lot of different things for a lot of different people, and entertainment is an industry that is often dominated by men. What has been your kind of personal experience, if you will?
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say it was really difficult being feminine in my industry. But when people knew that I was a lesbian or a dyke, all of a sudden I was their bro. And all of a sudden I was good to hang out in their rooms. I was respected as a vice president. I was there at Universal Music Group for over 10 years, I think close to 14. And as soon as I was one of the boys, I liked that same sex that they did, my opinions were valid. And I always make sure that I support my women around me. I feel so blessed to be here with you guys. And I went to Smith College, so I was also blessed to be able to call any of my sisters at any time and be like, I need you, and they were like, done. I'm not afraid to ask anybody for anything. I can't always get it done, but I'll never not ask. And I feel like that came because I went to a school that had so much camaraderie, and I really hope that not just women, but men especially, you have sisters and mothers and grandmas, and you were brought into the world by women. Like, everybody just needs to just respect. It's just about respect and love, you know, and kindness, and want everybody to do great, spreading great energy, tentacles.
I mean, the one good thing Trump has brought to the table, this is a positive, is that I think women have stood up and are rallying, saying, we're not going to stand for that anymore. We're not going to let people talk to us like that. We're not going to let them do those things. And we're going to band together and change it. And I think that's something good that's come out of this election.
Yeah, it's taken away the layer of shame, because as one woman speaks, another woman speaks, and that bold girls club grows.
And Reyna, I want to bring you into this too, because we've seen not just against women, but also, as I mentioned earlier, against the Latino community. And you said, you know, you don't mess with young Latinas. You know, this kind of community bringing together aspect that you were talking about, Tabby. Have you seen that as well? And what do you think the impact kind of young girls, especially college age Latina women of any race and ethnicity, looking at seeing kind of their mothers, their older sisters, other women in the community banding together, in many cases against Donald Trump? What impact do you think that has on a new generation of young women growing up?
Yeah, well, I think it's really empowering for Latinas to know that, you know, a female has the potential to become the leader of one of the most powerful countries in the world. And that really goes a long way, because, you know, sometimes when we have young girls who show their leadership abilities, sometimes they get, you know, labeled as bossy, you know. And I think, and I've seen that a lot with my daughter, who is a great leader. But I think we need to encourage that, not just with Latinas, but just women in general, you know, just to encourage their leadership skills and to make sure they grow up feeling really confident as leaders, and, you know, being able to exert their voice and know that they're, you know, that they have a lot of things to contribute to this society. So I see a lot of, our youth tend to be dreamers, and they tend to be risk takers. They tend to be the ones who are constantly pushing for social change, for justice. They're the ones who are really positive in terms of wanting to change the world and make it a better place. And I think young women are in a place where they can start to do that now more than ever, because
And you're a perfect
Hillary
example
Clinton.
of that,
Yes.
Reyna.
Yeah, I mean, Reyna,
I mean,
just
look
for
where you
people who-
came from, and here you're a best-selling author now for Simon & Schuster, so hats off to you.
Thank
You're a
you.
great role model.
And Brandy, I want to ask you about that too, because, you know, in this election we've had backlash, if you will, against women. You know, potentially electing the first female president can mean that the lines between gender and politician are maybe blurred. If you dislike the policies, maybe you dislike the fact that a woman is in charge. What impact do you think that can have on people's minds and bodies? You know, if you're seeing this in the media, if you will, what impact does that have on people?
You know, to be honest, to me right now, the biggest impact that's I'm seeing from people is the fear that's being bred into it by the Trump campaign, and just how much fear is being bred into our world. So I'm actually seeing, because I work with people on showing them how to like relieve pain with just their mind, and how to make changes in their physical body with using their own mind. And so that's what I see, is a lot of people actually having increased stress and increased fear and increased insecurity of a lot of fear. I guess fear would be the best way to put it. And
Super scary.
super scary. And
Even
some
within the political system itself. I was reading today, I mean, I think it was a Republican in Congress said no matter who Hillary put up for the Supreme Court, they were going to make sure they blocked it. They don't even know who the person is.
They don't even know. Yes.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of this mindset. if you will.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Well, women are
It
known
is.
to bring people together more, and she has been one that has reached across the aisle all these decades. She has been involved in politics, her husband too. So hopefully, you know, they will reach across the aisle and things will start to come together more, and there'll be a little bit more
Consensus building.
consensus
Right, and that's
building.
something that
That's
you may,
what
I'm
women
sure
are
you,
good at.
Right, that Tabby you work with too, right? There are different skill sets that different people have. What are some of those that you think a potential female leader has that maybe a male leader doesn't?
this is not a criticism of men, but compassion. I would say compassion, number one. Certainly male leaders have compassion, but I think women operate, as Brandy was saying, very much from the heart, maybe heart and the womb space, kind of the wisdom space as the first place, and then the mind comes in next, and then they all work together. And so I think women are coming from a place where they're looking at the whole picture all the time. And therefore, it's a more inclusive way of leading. Therefore, it's a way to help women live, love, and thrive.
Right.
Like your conference coming up, not just women, everyone.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the whole picture, when you're looking at young children, girls, boys, when you're looking at seniors, men, women, when you're looking at people living with disease, when you're looking at people living in poverty, when you're looking at people or children with special needs and so forth, you're seeing the whole picture and how all the pieces fit together. So no one is left behind. That's how we function, and that's a big difference between the leadership that we've seen thus far.
A more holistic approach,
More
if you will,
holistic,
that kind of comes
yes.
through and takes a lot of different aspects together.
Even
And what's
What-
exciting, even beyond the gender, like the gender thing is huge, but Hillary is so qualified for this role and has so much experience that even without the gender piece, I mean, she's just, her knowledge and her history is just incredible.
And kind of brings it all together. And the knowledge and history we've kind of had on this panel tonight has been really incredible. And I know you guys all have different areas that people get in touch with you, best-selling author, producer, this conference is coming up. And I'll just tell people who are watching at home that they can go to our website, trojanvision.com, and we'll have all the bios posted and also the contact information for different websites there as well. Thank you guys all for being here for this
Thank you.
wonderful
Thank you,
election
Cole.
night.
Thank you, Cole.
And thank
Thank
you
you.
for watching us on See You at USC. My name is Cole Sullivan. Good night.
You're watching Trojan Vision. For more of your favorite shows, check us out at trojanvision.com and like us on Facebook.